This is my second part of my fatigue and recovery video, and this is the recovery processes part. So, recovery. So, part of recovery is a stage called EPOC. This is excess post-exercise consumption above resting levels in recovery. As we can see from the graph above, the purple area is EPOC in the recovery stages. In the recovery stages, there is two stages. The alactic acid, this is the fast component, and the lactate acid, this is the slow component. The alactic acid stage uses a portion of the oxygen needed to resynthesize ATP and PC. The lactate acid stage also uses a portion of oxygen to remove the lactic acid from the muscles and from the blood. Depending on the type of exercise you're doing, this is dependent on recovery time. So, for example, if you're running a 100-meter sprint, this is going to be a short duration but a high intensity. Therefore, the recovery time will be very short. Whereas if you're running a marathon, this is a long duration and low intensity, so the recovery will be a lot longer than the 100 meters. So what equals into an EPOC is the alactic acid stage, the lactate acid stage, metabolic needs, which we'll talk about later on. So that makes EPOC. That consists of EPOC. So this graph here is the maximal exercise graph, and here is the submaximal. So the maximal is the 100-meter sprint, and the submaximal will be the recovery, will be the marathon. So the fast components. So the fast components are the alactic acid. So how does this component make energy? The alactic acid makes energy using a portion of oxygen plus fuels such as glycogen, fatty acids and proteins, and this energy is used to resynthesize ATP and PC. The extra VO2 is used to resaturate myoglobin, so this is used to carry and store oxygen in the muscles. And hemoglobin, this is found in the blood, which carries oxygen around the body using oxygen. This usually uses half a litre of oxygen and takes up to 1 to 2 minutes to be 100% recovered. And the resynthesis of ATP and PC stores, this usually takes up to 3 to 4 litres of oxygen, and this takes 3 to 4 minutes to be 100% recovered. All of this happens during the aerobic stages during the recovery stage. A factor affecting the recovery of this is if you are doing an interval sport such as tennis, because it's a stop and start at each point, and in the recovery stage you don't have enough time to fully recover, so each time you stop, the less and less ATP and PC are being restored. So the slow components. So what's the implications of an increased CO2? CO2 has an effect on our cardiac output and the ventilation. As we increase it, helps remove the high levels of CO2 from the body. During rest, our CO2 levels are very low as we aren't producing much, but as we exercise, these levels increase due to using our aerobic energy system. These levels increase, heart rate will increase also to get rid of the CO2 through to the blood. Therefore, cardiac output will increase. For example, if we are running a marathon, our heart rate will be quite high as we're exercising for a long period of time, so a lot of CO2 is going to be produced. Also, ventilation will increase as well, because we need to get more oxygen into the body to replace the CO2 and also to exhale the CO2. Lactic acid is produced and most of it needs to be removed. This is done by 3%, which is dissolved into the plasma of the blood. 23% is in as carbaminohemoglobin. 70% as carbonic acid, and this is removed via the blood to the lungs to be diffused into alveoli to be exhaled out, and this is how we remove lactic acid from our bodies. The use of lactic acid are 65% of the lactic acid is converted back to pyruvate, which then enters the Krebs cycle, used as fuel, and the remainder is converted back into CO2 or H2O. And we can easily get rid of the CO2 by exhaling out, or the CO2 which goes into we either sweat it out or we process it. 20% of the lactic acid is converted to glycogen, which occurs in the liver. This is stored in the liver and the muscles. 10% of the lactic acid is converted into proteins, and the remaining 5% of the lactic acid is converted to glucose via the Curie cycle in the liver. So the Curie cycle influences the way we get glucose back to pyruvate, and so glycolysis has to happen, which occurs in the muscles. We will then use the pyruvate as energy, as said before in the Krebs cycle. This then moves to the next stage via the blood. The lactate that is taken out of the muscles via the blood to the liver. This is then deoxygenized back to the pyruvate, and so this is used then in glycogenesis to make glucose. There are some advantages to lactic acid. The lactate in it is the good part, but the hydrogen ions, which is the bad, as this decreases the pH of the blood. The lactate is a very important fuel which is used in muscles so that we can do sports for a long duration, such as a marathon. As we produce lactate in one muscle, we then oxidize it in the other muscles, which then therefore helps improve sporting performance. This is when the muscles need to restore the glycogen in the muscles after they are used as a fuel. Factors affecting this are the duration and intensity. Examples of this are short duration and the high intensity activities such as 400 meters. The restoration of the glycogen in the body will take up to 2 hours, whereas if you did a long duration but low intensity, such as a marathon, it could take up to days to be able to restore all the glycogen in the muscles. We can replace this glycogen with carbs, such as pastas or gel drinks. This speeds up the recovery time of glycogen. We eat after exercise, so if we eat high carbs after exercise, this will speed up the process, and then if we eat 2-3 hours again after that, this will speed up the process again as we're replacing all the glycogen in our body with carbohydrates. So metabolic needs. This is the extra VO2, which is the volume of oxygen inhaled after exercise by organs such as your muscles and heart. So these are your respiratory muscles. These specific muscles need O2, such as your heart, to be able to keep your heart rate elevated, and your respiratory muscles also need oxygen, extra O2. If HR and VO2 increase, the metabolic rate will increase, therefore you burn more calories quickly, carbs quickly as well. The end result will mean that your cardiac output, which consists of your heart rate and your stroke volume, will increase, and your ventilation, which is your breathing rate and tidal volume, and also your temperature, will return back to resting levels, ready for you to be able to participate in exercise again. So the active cooldown. So active recovery. What is DOMS? DOMS is delayed onset of muscle soreness. This is the pain or stiffness you feel in your muscles after exercise, around 24 to 76 hours after. This is caused by the lowering of the pH of the blood, which triggers the pain receptors, causing the pain in the muscles. This active recovery allows the worked muscles to be flushed with oxygenated blood, reducing the effects of lactate and speeding up the recovery processes. This muscle soreness can increase injury due to muscle fibers getting damaged or torn. The skeletal muscle pump is one of your venous return mechanisms, as it helps the blood return to the heart to be oxidized. During an active recovery, the muscles are contracting, which acts as the skeletal muscle pump, flushing the blood from the muscles to either the heart or the liver to have toxins taken out. The venous valves stop the blood from flowing back into the muscles as they close each time the muscle relaxes, as shown in the diagram up here. So this is the muscle contracting, pushing the blood up, and here the muscles relaxing, closing these valves, which is shown here. So, factors affecting the rate of lactate removal consists of the intensity of the exercise and what type of recovery. The intensity of exercise will affect the rate of lactate removal, because if you are working at a low intensity, your lactate buildup will be very low and easy to remove. Whereas if you are working at high, if there was a high amount of lactate in the muscles, it will be hard to remove the muscles from the muscles and will take longer for it to be taken out. For example, if you're running a 800 meter, you are working at a high intensity, building up a high amount of lactic acid. Also, another factor affecting lactate removal is what type of recovery process you use. There are two types of this: active and passive recovery. Passive recovery is if you perform a rest during the recovery process, not circulating the blood, removing the lactic acid as quickly as if you were doing an active recovery. So this is when you're performing a light exercise such as a jog or something around that, during the process using the skeletal muscle pump to remove the blood quicker from the muscles, which then has the lactate in the muscles. So other ways to recover are cryotherapy and dietary hydration. So cryotherapy uses a cold bath or an ice bath to quickly cool down the muscles, which then, as the muscles get cold, the blood needs to get to the muscles, and as the blood goes to the muscles, you then remove this lactic acid as your muscles are trying to circulate the blood, which is then taking out the lactic acid. Also, dietary hydration. So as you hydrate, the water helps remove this lactic acid from your muscles, as the water in the blood it takes out the lactic acid in the muscles. So this has been my recovery video, part 2 of fatigue and recovery.